When Saint Mother Teresa could not sleep for 2 nights in her hospital bed, her close friend Archbishop Henry de Souza of Calcutta ordered an exorcism to be performed, and it worked. Clearly, exorcisms have been a huge part of the Christianity and one of the most potent weapons to fight the devil and his minions. But sometimes, these do not go as planned. Some exorcisms lead to death, and sometimes the victims are as young as 6-month-old infants. In this video, we will explore the 12 scariest real-life exorcisms that went horribly wrong. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. 1. George Lukins. George Lukins, sometimes called the Yatin demoniac, created huge waves of horror and speculation in 18th century England. Born around 1744 and working as a tailor, he found himself in the midst of possession stories in 1778, though he was officially exorcised 10 years later, in 1788, when he was about 44. The whole thing started when a traveler named Mrs. Sarah Barber alerted the Reverend Joseph Easterbrook, an Anglican vicar, about George's strange behavior in Yatin, Somerset. She claimed George suffered unusual fits. He howled, screamed in unearthly voices, and insisted that no doctor could cure him. Locals believed he once had a solid reputation and regularly went to church. But for the last 18 years, he experienced these odd attacks, which he blamed on a supernatural slap he got while acting in a Christmas pageant. Physicians tried everything, from a notable surgeon named Dr. Smith in Rington to a lengthy hospital stay at St. George's in London. Yet everyone deemed George incurable. Eventually, folks decided it was witchcraft or a demonic presence. George himself swore he had 7 demons, and only 7 clergymen could drive them out. Reverend Easterbrook reached out to fellow Methodists, who joined him in a prayer session. One minister, the Reverend John Valton, admitted he initially felt too weak in faith to handle a demoniac, but when the time came, he believed God's power would prevail. On June 13, 1778, Easterbrook and 6 other clergymen took George to Temple Church's vestry. They prayed, sang hymns, and commanded the demons to go back to hell in the name of the Trinity. George then shouted, "Blessed Jesus," and prayed the Lord's Prayer, marking his supposed deliverance. Newspapers like the Bristol Gazette reported that during his possession, George barked, claimed to be the devil, and even twisted religious song. Critics scoffed. The Gentleman's Magazine wrote George only had epilepsy and St. Vitus's dance, while Dr. Ferrier, a medical demonologist, dismissed him as a fraud. Despite the backlash, Easterbrook defended George's case by referring to scripture and old accounts of demonic possession. 2. Kristy Bamu. Kristy Bamu's story is truly heartbreaking. He was visiting his sister, Magali Bamu, 29, and her partner, Eric Bakubi, 28, in their flat in Newham, East London, for Christmas in 2010. Kristy arrived with 4 other siblings, hoping for a festive holiday. Instead, he was tortured for days and then drowned in the bathtub on Christmas Day during what his sister and her boyfriend called an exorcism. When the case reached the Old Bailey, the details horrified the public. Kristy had 130 injuries, including wounds from sticks, metal bars, knives, and ceramic tile. The pair even used pliers on his ears. Bakubi forced everyone else to take part in the abuse and insisted Kristy was a witch who had brought evil, Kindoki, into their home. At one point, he told Kristy and his siblings to jump out of a window to prove whether they could fly. Kristy's sisters avoided the worst after they confessed to witchcraft, but Kristy didn't. He wet his pants, and that was enough for Bakubi to single him out for brutal punishment. The judge described the murder as having a sadistic element. Bakubi, believed to have brain damage, still received at least 30 years. Magali Bamu got 25 years. The judge didn't accept her excuse that she had no belief in witchcraft. He said she never even apologized, which hinted she was deeply complicit. During the trial, Kristy's sister Kelly testified that the couple was obsessed with witchcraft and that Magali didn't give a damn, while Kristy begged for forgiveness. The entire ordeal was so severe that law enforcement compared it to crimes that almost passed belief. Scotland Yard later revealed it had investigated dozens of faith-based or ritual abuse cases over the past decade, though many go unreported. Kristy's parents felt betrayed, especially because Magali didn't intervene to save her own brother. The child's death exposed how dangerous and twisted certain interpretations of exorcism or spiritual cleansings can become, especially when misguided beliefs and mental health issues collide. 3. Victoria Climbié. Victoria Adjo Climbié was an 8-year-old girl from Côte d'Ivoire whose tragic death in 2000 reshaped the entire child protection system in the UK. She arrived in London with her great-aunt, Marie-Thérèse Kowal, who had promised her a better education. Instead, Kowal and her boyfriend Carl Manning subjected Victoria to horrific abuse and ultimately killed her. Details from the trial revealed that Victoria was forced to sleep in a cold bathroom, tied up in a garbage bag filled with her own filth. She endured cigarette burns, scalding hot water, and regular beatings with objects like hammers, wires, and belt buckles. She was starved, left bound for over 24 hours, and sometimes forced to eat like a dog. The abuse was relentless. Shocking as all that sounds, the most appalling part was how many agencies saw warning signs but did nothing. Police, social workers across 4 local authorities, NHS staff, the NSPCC, and local churches all encountered Victoria and noticed evidence of abuse, yet no one intervened effectively. A judge later called it blinding incompetence. Kowal and Manning were eventually convicted of murder and got life sentences. Victoria's case sparked huge public outrage and led to a formal inquiry about Lord Lamming. The inquiry found multiple missed chances to save this little girl. It concluded that many agencies had shoddy practices and that some workers lacked proper training. There were also discussions on possible racial biases, as many parties involved were black, and assumptions were made, or not made, based on that. The reforms that followed changed UK child protection forever. The government launched the Every Child Matters initiative and introduced the Children Act 2004. They also created a centralized database called Contact Point, later shut down by a new government, and established the Office of the Children's Commissioner to advocate for kids' rights in England. 4. Anneliese Michel. Anneliese Michel's story inspired the 2005 film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Born in Bavaria, West Germany, she died at 23 on July 1, 1976, after enduring 67 exorcisms over 10 months. Doctors diagnosed her with epilepsy first, then depression and possible psychosis. But nothing improved her condition. She had visions of demonic faces and claimed malevolent spirits tormented her. Her devout Catholic parents and 2 priests, Father Arnold Renz and Pastor Ernest Alt, chose exorcism over continued medical care. Anneliese believed she was possessed by demons such as Lucifer, Cain, and Judas, along with historical figures like Hitler and Nero. Her mother, Anna Michel, saw what she believed were signs from God, like stigmata on Anneliese's hand, that suggested Jesus wanted these exorcisms to continue. Anneliese eventually refused all food and water, thinking starvation would drive the demons away. This worsened her health, and she dropped to just 68 pounds at death. The aftermath was explosive. Courts found her parents and the 2 priests guilty of negligent homicide and sentenced them to 6 months in prison, though they ended up on probation. Some experts say Anneliese likely had paranoid schizophrenia. Repeated exorcisms may have reinforced her belief in possession. Others argue that her fasting and the unusual phenomena raised questions that pure science can't answer. Her mother believed Anneliese sacrificed herself to atone for others. 5. Amora Carson. In 2009, a deeply disturbing case of infant murder came to light in Texas. Jessica Carson and her boyfriend, Blaine Keith Millam, believed Jessica's 13-month-old baby, Amora, was possessed by demons. The couple wanted an official exorcism but didn't have enough money. Millam decided to handle it himself and subjected the child to unspeakable cruelty. They offered different explanations after Amora's death: a dog attack, a car accident, or that they found her injured when they returned from a pawn shop. But the truth eventually came to light, and it was revealed that Millam, who was already a registered sex offender, had tortured and sexually assaulted the baby in what he called an exorcism. Amora's injuries were horrendous. A court convicted Jessica Carson of failing to protect her own daughter and sentenced her to life without parole. Millam, the main perpetrator, received the death penalty. 6. Irene Mbithe. In a Kenyan slum called Kangaroo, authorities arrested a woman named Irene Mbithe for allegedly killing her 6-month-old son, Brian Kibet, during a self-styled demon exorcism. Shocked neighbors heard a disturbing overnight commotion in Mbithe's home. When police arrived, they discovered the boy's tongue and intestines had been pulled out. Mbithe claimed she intended no harm and kept on insisting that she was only trying to free her son from evil forces. But Brian's aunt, and other witnesses were horrified. Some spoke of loud, strange noises that lasted through the night. Mbithe herself seemed shell-shocked, repeating that God should punish her if she did anything wrong to the son she had prayed to conceive. In Kenya, instances of exorcisms are not unheard of. Authorities say such faith-based rituals can be risky when performed by untrained individuals, especially if they spiral into violence. After Brian's death, Mbithe was taken to KO police station for questioning, and the boy's body went to the morgue. 7. Clara Germana Cele. Clara Germana Cele was a 16-year-old student at St. Michael's Mission in Natal, South Africa, who allegedly made a pact with the devil. Orphaned and baptized at birth, she later told Father Horner, Erasmus, that she formed this satanic deal, which apparently unleashed all kinds of strange events. Witnesses reported that Clara started understanding languages she never studied. People said she followed Polish, German, French, and more. She revealed private details of others' lives and flew into wild fits, especially when confronted with holy objects. Nuns recorded her growls, describing them as animal-like, more terrifying than even a lion's roar. Some swore she levitated up to 5 feet off the ground, snapping out of it only when sprinkled with holy water. This bizarre situation brought in 2 Catholic priests, Reverend Mansuetti and Reverend Erasmus. They spent 2 days performing an exorcism. Clara fought back viciously, knocking the Bible from a priest's hands and even trying to choke him with his stole. But by the end, the demon was supposedly driven out, and Clara found peace again. She lived the next 6 years quietly, passing away in 1912 from heart failure at 22. Over time, many forgot her name, yet her story stands among the most startling tales of possession in early 20th century Africa. 8. Michael Taylor. In 1974, Michael Taylor lived in Ossett, West Yorkshire. He and his wife, Christine, got involved with a local Christian fellowship group led by Marie Robinson. When Christine publicly accused Michael and Marie of having a carnal relationship, Michael erupted in rage. He apologized later, but his behavior grew more unhinged. Alarmed, a vicar called in ministers skilled in deliverance to remove Michael's demon. The exorcism took place on the night of October 5th and 6th, 1974, at St. Thomas's Church in Gobber. Father Peter Vincent and a Methodist minister, the Reverend Raymond Smith, led the session, believing they cast out roughly 40 demons. From bestiality to blasphemy, they still sensed 3 lingering demons: murder, violence, and insanity, but let Michael leave, exhausted. What happened next was horrifying. Michael went home and brutally killed his wife Christine, ripping her eyes and tongue out and practically tearing off her face. He also strangled the family poodle. A policeman found him naked in the street, covered in blood. At his trial, Michael was acquitted by reason of insanity and spent 2 years in Broadmoor Hospital, then 2 more in a secure ward. 9. Roland Doe. The story behind the 1973 film, The Exorcist, can be traced back to a 13-year-old boy from 1948, remembered as Roland Doe. His family believed he was possessed after using a Ouija board. Strange, scratching sounds kept them up at night. Foul odors filled the house, and Roland's bed would shake violently. Things escalated so badly that desks at school rattled around him, and he grew verbally abusive toward priests and relatives. Frightened and desperate, his family brought him to a Catholic-run psychiatric facility, where Father William S. Bowdern took charge. The exorcism got intense. Roland, in a trance, reportedly spoke Latin and showed superhuman strength. At one point, he broke free from restraints and injured the priests. Observers said the experience was nearly identical to certain scenes in The Exorcist: floating bed, unnatural contortions, vile substances spewing forth. William Peter Blatty later wrote a 1971 novel based on a diary kept by the exorcists. When Hollywood adapted that novel, they changed Roland to a girl named Regan to protect the boy's privacy. The film became a cultural phenomenon and is often labeled the scariest movie ever made. 10. Maricia Irene Cornici. The Tanacu exorcism in Romania shocked the world in 2005, leading to the death of 23-year-old nun Maricia Irene Cornici at a secluded monastery. She had come from a rough background. Her father died by suicide, and she grew up in an orphanage. When she joined the Tanacu Monastery in early 2005, her behavior took a troubling turn, and doctors at a nearby psychiatric hospital diagnosed her with schizophrenia. But after 2 weeks, they discharged her back to the monastery, where some believed her symptoms were caused by demonic forces instead of mental illness. Father Daniel Petra Corganu, the 29-year-old priest running the monastery, concluded she was possessed. Nuns bound Irene's hands and feet, initially to keep her from harming herself or others. Then they strapped her to a cross-like contraption and carried her into the church to be cleansed. They placed a towel in her mouth so she couldn't shout curses and sprinkled her with holy water. After a few days, they untied her, assuming she was cured, but she soon fainted, and by the time paramedics arrived, her pulse was weak. In the ambulance, medics administered 6 doses of adrenaline. She died before reaching the hospital. Authorities noticed the marks on her wrists and ankle, and the autopsy pointed to dehydration, exhaustion, and lack of oxygen. However, the coroner later argued her death might have stemmed from an adrenaline overdose. The trial dragged on, capturing massive media coverage in Romania. Father Corganu and 4 nuns were charged in connection with Irene's death, ultimately receiving prison sentences. His was 7 years. Oddly enough, many people in Tanacu sided with the priest, believing Irene truly was possessed, with her own brother suggesting he saw Satan enter her. This case exposed deep cultural tensions in post-communist Romania, where religious fervor surged. After decades of state-sponsored atheism, critics pointed to the monastery's isolation, the priest's questionable theological training, and an overall failure to distinguish mental illness from demonic possession. Anna Ecklund, Emma Schmidt. Known in many accounts as Emma Schmidt, Anna Ecklund became famous for a harrowing exorcism in 1928, though she first exhibited signs of possession back in her teens. Sources vary, but one thread remains constant. Anna was raised in a Catholic household in Wisconsin, some say Marathon, and she started showing an intense aversion to holy objects during adolescence. She even claimed to have engaged in disturbing sexual acts. Some pin the blame on her Aunt Mina, rumored to be a witch who cast curses on Anna's food. Others said Anna's father was abusive and also entangled with Aunt Mina. The first exorcism took place in 1912 under Father Theophilus Ressinger, a German-born Capuchin priest. Though few details emerged from that session, Anna later sought him out again in 1928 with Father Joseph Steiger's help. They moved her to a convent in Earling, Iowa, run by Franciscan nuns. Anna went into violent fits, hissing at holy water and speaking in languages she never learned. Witnesses claim she levitated and hung on to door frames with unnatural strength. The exorcism dragged on for 3 separate sessions across August, September, and December, each lasting days. Rejected food, vomited strange debris, and swelled up in the face. The nuns grew so frightened that some begged to leave. Father Ressinger believed multiple demons possessed Anna, including the spirit of her father, named Jacob in some accounts, her Aunt Mina, and even Judas Iscariot. On December 23rd, Anna allegedly let out final howl of Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina, followed by hell, 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 before collapsing. Then she calmly returned to herself. My Jesus, mercy. Praised be Jesus Christ. That brought the exorcism to an end, but some say she experienced milder possession afterwards. Arne Cheyenne Johnson. Arne Cheyenne Johnson's case is linked to the famous paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who claimed that Johnson became possessed after challenging a demon that was tormenting his fiance's younger brother, David Glatzel. In 1980, David started seeing an old man who threatened him and caused violent night terrors. The Glatzel family enlisted a priest, then the Warren, who concluded David was dealing with multiple possessions. During one session, Arne supposedly yelled at the demon to leave David and enter him instead. Not long after, Arne displayed his own strange behavior. One day, in February 1981, he took a sick day from work and ended up at the kennel where his fiancée Debbie worked, along with some family members and landlord Alan Bono. Bono drank heavily at lunch. A confrontation erupted, and Arne attacked Bono with a pocket knife, stabbing him multiple times. Bono later died, making this the first murder in Brookfield, Connecticut's history. At trial, Arne's lawyer tried the demonic possession defense. It didn't stick, and Arne was convicted of first-degree manslaughter. The story took on new life in TV reenactments and pop culture, often called the Devil Made Me Do It case. Regardless of one's view on the supernatural, the outcome was real. One man dead, and Arne Cheyenne Johnson behind bars, leaving a chilling example of how alleged possession can collide with tragic violence in everyday life. Marvelous conclusion. Exorcism versus psychology. Exorcisms have long been used to address all sorts of problems that we now recognize as mental health conditions. In the past, if someone showed signs of schizophrenia, personality disorder, delusions, or hallucinations. Folks often believed they needed an exorcism. Even depression could seem like possession when a person acted in scary or unpredictable ways. In places where people firmly believe demons cause strange behavior, mental illness can take on demonic shade. For instance, someone with schizophrenia might think they hear Satan's voice, or that they're Satan themselves, because they grew up around teachings that make this scenario feel real. Even today, especially in deeply religious settings or developing regions, exorcisms still happen. They're not limited to mental illness either. Epilepsy can cause convulsion, while drug addiction, head injury, or brain tumor can turn someone's behavior upside down, which might look like a classic possession. Typical exorcisms follow a familiar pattern. The possessed person acts more and more disturbed until the exorcist chases the demon away. Victims might speak in gibberish, throw up, fall sick, or hurt themselves. Sometimes they drink potion or starve, which triggers even more bizarre symptoms. Some claim exorcisms succeed because participants enter a trance where suggestion can change their behavior. The whole ritual also feels cathartic, which can inspire a shift in someone's mindset. But exorcisms can cross a dangerous line. People have died in the process, often when parents or family members tried to rid someone of demons by force. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.